Allow me to set the stage. It's the Roman Empire in the 4th century. This was a time of great cultural, political, and religious upheaval. Yeah, the Romans were at the height of their power and influence, but the empire was certainly in decline. Meanwhile, Christianity, although enjoying a much improved status thanks to Emperor Constantine's conversion, was still a minority religion that was being persecuted in some parts of the empire. 354 CE, or AD if you're using the Gregorian calendar, the Roman province of Africa is a thriving center of learning culture at the time. This is where Augustine was born. Augustine was the son of a devout Christian mother and a pagan father. They may not have agreed on much, but they did invest in their son's schooling. They saved what they could to provide young Augustine with a proper Roman education in the hopes of landing a good career. Thankfully, this desire to learn stuck with Augustine. From his earliest years, he began to search for truth. Augustine showed incredible promise in school, as would be expected of a future great thinker. And at around 16 years old, his parents sent him to the University of Carthage, located in the northernmost tip of Africa. He studied literature and poetry and had a brilliant intellect. But, as the case of many college students today, he was sort of a wild child. Self-indulgence, pleasure, crime even. He is famously known to have stolen some fruit from a neighbor just because. Around this time, Augustine's father died, but not before having a deathbed conversion to the Christian faith. And while I'm sure this conversion thrilled his mother, Augustine felt that Christianity lacked in intellectual substance. At the time, the classical traditions of the Greeks and Romans were in a sort of renaissance, and Christianity, it seemed, just lacked sophistication. And though Augustine continued down this path of intellectual pursuits and living life of sin and excess, his mother never stopped praying for him. Meanwhile, Augustine's career was advancing. He rose through the ranks of teacher, then professor, and all the while he remained deeply troubled by his own sinful nature. Augustine dove into the writings of Saint Ambrose. Ambrose was a highly respected 4th century bishop of Milan and a prominent figure in the early Christian church. Ambrose convinced Augustine of the intellectual depth of Christianity. Ambrose's persuasive arguments and strong conviction ultimately brought Augustine to embrace the Christian faith for himself. This was a turning point, and at the age of 32, Augustine was baptized into the Christian faith. Augustine returned to his hometown and was ordained as a priest, and a few years later was made bishop of the nearby city of Hippo. Yes, Augustine was a brilliant thinker, but unlike his college days, he now lived a simple life. He held an important position, and he operated like a parish priest, preaching regularly and writing extensively in an effort to help people understand the deep mysteries of the faith. Remember, Christianity was in its infancy. The ink had barely dried on the first agreed-upon tenets of faith. There was the Roman Creed, but what we know today as the Apostles' Creed was still a few hundred years away. Augustine's topic included the natures of sin, the Trinity, the Sacraments, God's providence, free will, and why God gave us the gift of free choice, even though he still knew it could be misused. He believed that God gave us freedom because it's necessary for the perfection of creation, even if some of us end up using it in ungrateful ways. It's just another example of God's goodness. Augustine bridged the gap between ancient and modern thinking, and that's a pretty big deal. Big events are happening, and he's creating tools to navigate into the next era. His ideas were so influential that they helped shape Christian theology for centuries to come. His work continues to be studied and discussed to this day. Augustine looked at other great thinkers like Cicero and Aristotle in their search for truth and concluded that they were ultimately searching for God. His intensely personal account of his spiritual journey, called The Confessions, is a unique combination of personal reflection, deep thinking, religious studies, and the analysis of Christian scripture. Take this quote, for example.
Thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it finds its rest in thee.
Augustine's revelations, such as original sin, that all humans inherit the sin of Adam and Eve and are in need of redemption through faith in Jesus Christ, became a central doctrine of Western Christianity and helped to establish the importance of salvation and grace in Christian theology. In addition, his emphasis on the importance of the inner spiritual life, the idea of a personal relationship with God, and not just following religious rituals and laws, was a totally new perspective. They helped to shift the focus of Christianity from an external religious observance to internal transformation. As his teachings spread throughout the Western Church, he started influencing generations of believers in both the East and Western world. His ideas have had a lasting impact on the Christian tradition and is widely considered one of the greatest minds in the history of Christianity.